but it's very applicable to the large-scale work we're working on here in the Weber River. So I think we're ready to go.
Sounds good. Thank you. I always hate following Melissa because she's so good and you learn things you're just going to not learn so much and be super educated because we're not talking about the Weber River. However, I did grow up in the Weber River watershed. I grew up in Syracuse. I went to high school in Clearfield. My grandparents' house is still across the street from Clearfield High, so that is my connection to the Weber River. We're going to talk about the Bear River Basin, though. And maybe this will play.
In the remote stretches of Utah's West Desert, tucked within the boundaries of the Utah Test and Training Range, a discovery waited beneath layers of earth, unseen for over 12,000 years. These are the trackway footprints, left by ancient people as they walked across a soft, silty marsh, long since dried by time and sun. They moved with purpose, families, children, perhaps hunters, leaving behind not just tracks, but stories. Who were they? They were people like us, living in a world vastly different, yet deeply connected. These footprints are the closest thing we have to shaking hands across millennia. And here, we can go back, through science, through story, and visualize that era. A delta fed by Lake Bonneville, mud slick with water, and bare human feet pressing into the earth. Over thousands of years, those prints hardened, buried, forgotten, until archaeologist Dr. Darren Duke and his team, using ground-penetrating radar, uncovered what nature had carefully preserved. But this wasn't just a scientific breakthrough. It was a cultural awakening. More than 20 Native American tribes, including the northwestern band of the Shoshone Nation, came forward to guide how this site should be understood. Their stories brought meaning. Their stewardship gave the footprints life again. Together, with Far Western, Cornell University, the U.S. Air Force, and tribal voices, this became a shared mission to protect, interpret, and honor what was found. Even today, jets streak the sky above this sacred ground. The U.S. Air Force, recognizing its role as a steward, has taken steps to preserve this site. Warfare and preservation may seem at odds, but here they coexist. Because these aren't just footprints, they are voices, imprints of a moment when people passed through and unknowingly reached forward to us.
So speaking of sentinel landscapes, there you go. So yeah, it's at that site, our ancestors were there. Since then, they found mammoth prints and some other animal prints. And so really cool site to take care of. But I like to show that so people can see what it used to look like with the Great Salt Lake. This is a map. It's called the Ferris map. It's at BYU. And you can see at the bottom going that way, that's the Great Salt Lake going west. And, it took us a while from rearranging this and a few archaeologists to say, well, no, water used to go that far. And, oh, yeah, it did. And so this kind of gives you a perspective of the Great Salt Lake. This is what we call our Aboriginal territory. The Northwestern Band of Shoshone has never been given a reservation. So Aboriginal territory is very important to us, and everything you see in green is what we ceded to the United States government in our treaties, and so that's the land that we ceded. And so, the Bear River is not too much different than the Weber River, but you can see, kind of how the Bear River watershed works within the area, and just really why we're trying to focus on this. These markings are where Aboriginal homes are found, or bison bones and different things are found. And if you look at the pattern, that is exactly the Bear River. And you see it again there. we always camped around water, always, we didn't, contrary to popular belief, we didn't go settle in the desert. We knew where good things were. And so just kind of showing that. So we're doing what's called the Wuda Ogwa project. Wuda Ogwa means Bear River. It's just a literal translation. And so the reason we're doing that is in 2018, we purchased close to 500 acres of what we call the Bear River Massacre site. The Bear River Massacre is the largest massacre of Indians by the United States Army in the history of North America, and something that we, feel close to. It took us a long time, but we were able to save up enough money, and one day it came for sale. We purchased it, and so we got this, and we're looking at this, and we're like, this is a battle site, this is a Civil War site. What do we do? And so we decided, well, let's restore it. We're not farmers, we're not ranchers. What do we do? So we wanted to do a full ecological restoration of the land. I mean, you can imagine that the land, when we got it, it was pure pasture land, pure grazing land. Water had been channelized, and so the water quality and different things, have been really bad. Darren Olson, who is here from BioWest, will become relevant in a little bit, and you'll absolutely know when, because I won't know what I'm looking at. And he'll be able to explain all of the different studies that we're trying to do. So we are in violation of the Clean Water Act there at the Bear River, where we are. What's called Battle Creek, it used to be called Beaver Creek, is the highest sediment loader in the entire Bear River system. So we're contributing more sediment than anywhere else in the Bear River watershed. So good for us. That's a problem we need to fix, isn't it? So, when you inherit this land, you try to figure out what's going on. We would come here for what's called the warm dance. And many Shoshone different tribes and many Shoshone bands, there's about 14 different bands, but they would come here for warm dance and basically spend the winter there. You spend all of your time collecting food so you could take 3 or 4 months off in the winter. It was like a large, lack of a better word, powwow or festival or rendezvous. And, you met with other bands, and you got married and swapped stories. I call it gambling, gossip, and games, because they certainly did a lot of those things. And so this is one day, I don't know why. I mean, when you get four men together, you need a supervisor, because we decided to measure how hot it was in that spring. And so we're leaning over, holding on to each other with a thermometer, trying to figure it out. So it was 190 degrees. So I said, please don't let me go. And somehow we figured it out. But that hot springs is just the last remnant of what we have there. And we want to protect that. And so you can see what we're trying to do is we have a lower Battle Creek restoration. The lines that you see on there are channels that we're going to construct. So we can take the water out of the Battle Creek that's going straight and meander it the way it should go and had gone before, land ownership in 1880. But this is what our ancestors would have typically seen in 1863 is these wandering creek meanders. And so that's what we're trying to do with our project, because, we get all this sediment, and how do we disperse it out? That's one of the things that we're doing and that's how we'll use our water. That's how we're using our water right. We've invested, I don't know what, 100,000 trees so far in the ground. And, that's a lot. That's our largest investment. And you need water to keep those things growing. And so you'll see, kind of what we're doing. For those of you that have maybe heard about the project or seen it before, we're going to try and update you. But these are some of the goals that we have. Drought, cultural area, better water quality, just kind of a reminiscent of kind of what we saw in the video. Just to start off, this is kind of what it takes to pull off this kind of a project. If you haven't donated, you can feel shame right now. But we're still collecting. We're still asking for donations. We still go out for grants. because the tribe is really trying to do this, with the community, but be the leader in, hey, we're applying for grants, we're asking for donations. So the creation of river braids and meanders, we're looking at trying to bring back native fish, and the native fish that were there were the Bonneville cutthroat trout. We're a long way away from that. But that's our goal. So if you see that BCT, the Bonneville cutthroat, just kind of sitting there, that's the kind of water clarity we're going for. And then you can see, our meanders and ponds that we have dug. And so, this looks vastly different than day one. If you've been to the site, if you haven't been recently, you probably won't recognize it. So this is the site where this is the construction for our diversion, to take the water and push it into the creek meanders that I'm talking about. And so this is the first step. You have to have this or you can't move water. I forgot that was a video. And then our culverts, we're putting in new culverts to handle the water. We can handle up to, I think, 200 CFS, 225 CFS if it were to come down. During that 2023 winter event, we had about 175, 190 CFS that came down, absolutely tore out the beaver dam that was there, tore out 2 of our bridges, took out a road. We were lucky that this area here that we're putting the new culvert in didn't go. And so now, that water just jumped the banks and was going down Highway 91 and was causing all sorts of issues. And so hopefully we can help the community by managing that water. You can see, I love construction pictures. So this is just a big hole that we're going to put the diversion in. Here's the structure that's, we're already pouring concrete. We're already getting ready for that water to come in there. Whereas before you would have just seen, just a little space with a little trickle of water coming through. You can see what we're preparing for. And those of you who have been to the site, you haven't seen this yet. So this is kind of an update. Another thing that we're doing. One of our biggest things is removing invasive species, and people ask me this a lot. Why? Well, because the word invasive, there you go. That's really the purpose of that. Russian olive is a water suck. There was a recent study out of Salina, Utah that said that Russian olive trees, I think 24 or something inches in diameter, take 225 gallons a day out of the system just so they can survive. Smaller ones we know take about 75 gallons of water a day. We have 60 acres of these things. And so we had estimated we have about 400,000 Russian olive. And we are about 2/3 done removing this stuff. But that's what you have to do. And that's what we thought we had to do. And you can see this is kind of the outline of the Utah Conservation Corps from the UCC from Utah State. They come up every fall and they have done so for the last 5 years, and they remove Russian olive. They camp out on the ground. They I don't know what they eat, something, but they seem to all survive, which is good. But, from this picture to this is kind of what we're doing. And, kind of putting the grease in it. Now you can kind of see we're starting to make a dent. This was our most heavily dense area. We did all the easy stuff. We picked out off really first. This is a 15-acre corral. This would have been a horse corral that we would have used. There would have been natural barriers. We would have used, created some sort of a fence, but the horses would have been surrounded. And also, they were also able to free come and go. Because when you're staying there in the winter, your horses need something to eat. The ground was warm. There wasn't snow really on the ground. It was because of the temperature of, the geothermal that was there. And there's a lot of different people that had talked about that the Indians camped on dry ground, on warm ground. And so we figured, well, that's where our horses were eating. And you can kind of see some befores and after. This is looking out on that peninsula, looking out. Same with the Bear River right there. And then just kind of, where we're going. So that's one of the major things that we're doing. You remove invasive. So what do you have to do? You have to replant. And like I said, we've held 3 volunteer planting days. They're getting bigger and bigger and bigger. This year, I think of the 2 days we did it we always do it the first weekend in November. We had about a little over 750 volunteers that came and put in a whole bunch of trees. And we appreciate that. We would have put in more, but the government was shut down and we only had so much money. So we're gonna really beef up that effort this year. But this helps protect those Russian olive and things are coming back, and it's better for the water. It's better for the birds. And you can just kind of see what we're trying to do, the seeding and planting of the vegetation. We're drill seeding, we're testing out grass mixes and seed mixes, what's going to work. We source our plants, in a couple of weeks, we'll be going out and we'll take cuttings off of the trees and the plants that are there, and we'll grow them at a nursery, at the High Mountain Nursery. And that way, when the plants are reintroduced, they're reintroduced to the ground that it came from. We had some ground on what we call Washakie, basically a reservation. We got some trees from California. They did not last very long because of the high salinity content, just the whole makeup. So we really try hard to source our plants. And you can kind of see the areas, the little sticks that you see are just little plants, just kind of poking up. When I say trees, people like plant trees. The first time they came, they were like, people had like big shovels and were like ready to go. And they're like, where's the trees? And they were like this tall. I mean, people were expecting, these skyscraper trees. And I'm like, no, those cost a little more. And they're a little harder to put in. And you can see this is just from our last planting day, just kind of looking out, seeing, some of the things set out, just grazing land that's going to turn into wetlands. Just people who are excited to do things. And so now we're getting into water flow and quantity, and I'll ask Darren to kind of come up and join me, because we'll start talking about what we're seeing. So when we started this out, there was me. I had just met Darren. I don't know where my engineer went today. He snuck off. And one other person. I had just met Darren for the first time. This was in November of 2019, and we all shook hands and said, well, let's start planning a project. Well, the next week was Thanksgiving, and for some reason, and the NRCS does this, and I don't know why. If you're here, you can come talk to me later, but the application due date was the Friday after Thanksgiving. And so we met a week before, and so we had 4 days basically to write a proposal. We almost got it, by the way. It was, kind of down to us, but we were kind of glad we didn't get it because we absolutely had no idea really what we were doing yet. But we did start to plan things. But I came from the Bureau of Reclamation. I came from the Colorado River Basin Salinity Control Program, so a water quality program. And so when I go there and see this water, it's, to me, it's like, okay, we got to fix this. And for the last 160 years, it's just been degraded. And so we're going to talk about a monitoring overview that we have. We have several weather stations and water stations that are out there measuring, and that's what BioWest is leading our efforts. And so you can kind of see where things are, in relation to what we're trying to accomplish. And really, we'll just kind of get in, and I'll let Darren kind of talk about the nuts and bolts of these slides that are going to come up next. You can just tell me, Harold.
You bet. So in measuring our flows and water quality in this stream, Battle Creek really doesn't have any historical measurements. We tried to find out if it's ever been monitored, and it hasn't really been. So a lot of the data collections the first time, which is kind of unusual, to have a stream with no data available. And it must have just been so polluted that why even measure it? Because in the turbidity levels, instead of in state standard being, I think, 35 NTU, instead of it being in the tens or hundreds, it's actually in the thousands. We had to get our turbidimeter to go up into the thousands because that's really how polluted it is. And the water temperature, the flows are so low that that the water temperatures get above that lethal level for most fish during the summer. So we've done a lot of measurements to determine the sediment loads in Battle Creek and some of the water quality problems. And it's contributing about 30,000, in 2023, a high runoff year, contributed about 30,000 tons of sediment, total sediment load to Bear River, which is a huge source and a lot of erosion problems. You can see the water as it comes into Bear River, the different color of Battle Creek entering the Bear River.
Yeah, that what you see there, it looks like beach. That's not beach, that's water.
Yeah, that tan area is actually flowing water.
It doesn't taste very good. You can kind of walk on it, but that is water.
So, yeah, it's just there is actually bedload sediment, even though it's a silty bottom channel. There's actually gravel and that's moving along it. The problem is it's moving along year round, which because it's currently just a straight ditch, it moves that sediment year round. So it's either a grading, the bed rising, or during high flow, it's rescouring. And so the bed's constantly moving, which is hard for aquatic organisms, healthy ones, to really exist in. Brad mentioned some of the native species. We're actually pretty happy to have a healthy population of native fish in the middle portions of Battle Creek, not cutthroat trout, but Utah chub and some of our other native species are actually doing pretty well. And we think that that's because there's a natural barrier from the Bear River, and a lot of the non-native fish are having a hard time getting up into the middle sections of Battle Creek. And even though it's polluted, some of those native species are resilient.
Do you want to talk about birds? Or do you want me to?
Go ahead.
Okay. So part of the study that we're doing is we want to monitor birds. You know, that's kind of gauges the success of what we're doing. You know, we're putting in wetlands, we're putting in new ponds, we're planting trees, we use the discarded Russian olive branches to create, bird habitat. And so you can kind of see how the positive change is going by the birds that are coming and the different things that are coming in. We do expect maybe a little bit of a dip as we get the Russian olive out, but we're trying to work hard enough to kind of stay with that curve. And so how do we monitor birds? I don't know if anybody knows Dr. Frank Howe. He's, pretty famous bird guy, taught at Utah State, worked for the state. He's our bird guy, and he goes out and they just wander around and with things and just look at birds and write a little notepad, and then I get a bill and I get something like this. So you can kind of see the area that they're coming into, but you can kind of see the marsh birds, the point birds, in our little area, we're starting to see them stop. You can see the preliminary results. We have about 80 to 30 birds in each point. So we're getting a lot of different bird turnover. I think we have about 95 to 115 species that we've identified so far that are entering into the property. And we're right in that corridor, with the Bear River migratory birds. And then there's another migratory bird that is close to us in Idaho. And so you can kind of see just kind of the graphs and different things of how the birds are coming back. And that's very important to us. When we were there, we had a lot of birds. We're creating more marshes. And so we're trying to get more marsh birds to kind of come in and settle and to start to take over so other birds will kind of begin to land. So, and one way that we, try to do that is the ponds and the wetlands creation. We're taking this back in time. We're taking it back to natural wetlands. It's a natural filter for water. It cleans water. Birds like it, animals like it. And And so you can see what we're trying to do. We had a goal of at least two ponds. I think we're going to do 3 or 4 now, just with the funding and the different opportunities that we've had with seeing the birds come back. We've found some natural areas that we need to do. This is our pond that we dug a year and a half ago. We were going to connect it to the Bear River. Hopefully it would fill up. We got down to 10 feet and it's filled up on its own. We didn't expect that. We didn't expect the water table to be that high. But with all the Russian olive that we had removed and different things, it just came up. And so we were actually draining it so we could keep digging. And this is kind of what it looks like today. And you can see little birdies that are starting to come in nest. We're actually getting things to stay. We're getting our little friends to like go and nest there. And that's so positive and important for us, you know, to see that, hey, we're making a difference. And you can just kind of see the top picture is day 1. The bottom picture is kind of our goal. And then you can see what we're working with the lower Battle Creek Canal. You know, that's what we're changing, and that's what we're migrating into. And really why talk about this? Why do this? You know, why leave your job 18 months before you're going to get pension, you know, to come and do this? It's the cultural values of this. The Northwestern Band of Shoshone Nation, like I said, has never really owned land at all. Land ownership used to be foreign to us. But now that we have it, we want to protect it. And so our cultural values mix with the science that Darren's talked about. It mixes with the engineering that wherever Brian went would talk about. And then we didn't start out this project to be part of the Great Salt Lake solution. Absolutely, it was our cultural values. However, water runs downhill. And so the water that we contribute to the Bear River can be an augmentation for the Great Salt Lake. Yeah, it's going to take a minute. It's going to take a lot of people to agree to get it there. But we're really trying to. Our goal is to have at least 10,000 acre feet of water every year enter, you know, right into the Bear River. We're the last user on our system. It goes into the Bear River. The next use is across the line in Utah. And so we're really trying to do that. But really it's the tribe that wants to come together and plant medicine plants and food plants and have people come out and volunteer. It takes this community. Like I said, we had 750 people that came out on cold day with shovels and planted trees. And, you know, so grateful for that. And they've done that 3 years in a row. You know, this story is very important to us. You know, our ancestors, you know, Rios and I, you know, our ancestors were there. We know our grandparents that were there. We know their stories. We know how they escaped. We know how they survived and how they lived afterwards. And there were very few of us. And so protecting this land is the most important thing we can do. And what we want to do is just make it natural, because that's what we know. That's what we understand. And so by doing that, hopefully we have a positive impact on this basin, on the Great Salt Lake, and anywhere else. We're the only tribe that's in the Weber Basin, Bear River Basin, Great Salt Lake Basin watersheds. So we have kind of a lot on our shoulders. This is something we want to protect. So, and anyway, thank you for listening to us, and you know, that's it.
Thanks. That was great. Appreciate it, guys. And any questions? Is it that late already? It's not. It seems like it's dark outside, but it's still light out.
Seems like it's dark outside.
So I guess I understood turbidity and sedimentation to be the main water quality issues in Battle Creek. Is it just adding the sinuosity to the stream that is going to help reduce that, or what else are you doing to improve that water quality? Go ahead.
Yeah, restoring the channel and floodplain and an emergent marsh at the lower end, the lower mile of Battle Creek. But Battle Creek extends up into the headwaters, and there's a lot of sediment sources and grazing down along the channel and farming up to the edge of the channel. And so working in the watershed's actually really important, and working with landowners to try to cooperatively solve some of these larger water quality problems that are leading to polluted water and reduced summertime flows. So increasing the amount of beaver and beaver dams in the watershed, and increasing the spongy area to hold some of those high flows that we get earlier in the spring, and letting that water hopefully, we have goals of doubling and tripling the summer base flows, and that would do a lot to improving water quality also.
Any other questions? Okay, well, thanks again. Appreciate it.